Kia ora everyone, this is Mandy from Grow HR. It's been a wee while since we did a vlog, so it seemed timely to do it now as we're heading into more and more requirements for people to be self-isolating with Omicron now fully on the rounds in our communities. So in today's vlog, we're going to have a look at some of the impacts to be thinking about, not only on business but also your people, and some of the things that you can be thinking about now and taking control of. So we'll delve straight into this. So the isolation requirements are fairly significant. It's likely that we'll move fairly quickly into phase 2, which will reduce the time of self-isolation, but likely in response to the fact that there will be more people required to self-isolate. So if we think about what this could mean for your business at a very simple level without even looking too deep, you've got the potential that you're going to have less people. We're hearing lots of reports of parents having to self-isolate when children have been sent home from school, people that have been identified as close contacts. So straight away, that's less people at work. Less people equals less revenue. In some cases, depending on how many are identified as close contacts, there's the risk that you simply couldn't open. And then if you did have a COVID positive at work, there's the potential that you're going to have some extra cleaning costs to get on top of that deep clean. So from a business perspective, there is a wee bit to be thinking about, and it's worth trying to put some thought into that now rather than heat of the moment when it's harder to come up with solutions. For your people, they've got big considerations right now too. So we're sitting in really high inflation, rental costs have gone up, mortgages are going up, price of petrol is unbelievable at the moment. And now they're faced with these isolation requirements, and the direct impacts of that is potential loss of income for people as they're simply not able to work, potential loss of leave entitlements if that's going to be your starting point to see if people can take leave entitlements when they're being required to self-isolate if they can't work. And I've called it reduced well-being, but this is really the impacts, stress, depression, anxiety for people when they're being told to isolate inside their houses, not leave their front gate, not have contact with others in the household if they're COVID positive or identified as a close contact, not allowed any visitors. So lots to be thinking about there from just a pure people perspective. So that's just a very quick oversight in terms of thinking about, yes, both the business has its considerations, but your people do too. So managing challenges. So these are the challenges that we're up against in the next few weeks. What are some of the things that you can be thinking about and acting on? The first bit, and the bit I still can't reiterate enough, is engage and communicate. So for your people, having clarity now on what you'd consider if they were required to self-isolate for whatever reason, that is a conversation worth having right now. We've got some clients who are working through letters for their staff explaining what are the things that will be considered if they're required to go into self-isolation and simply cannot work. And that could be about using entitlements, it could be about accessing government support, it could be a blanket rule, it could be saying we'll deal with this on a case-by-case basis. But working through what that looks like now, there's real benefit in that. Communicating to keep contact details up to date. So do you know how to contact your employees if they can't come to work so you can keep in contact while they're away? Consulting and engaging around being prepared for home working. So understanding if anything's changed in the household, so the space they've got available to work in, what kit they've got available, can they even work from home? And also what work could they be doing from home so that you're ready to go. So if you've got somebody who normally works direct outside of the home, what could they be doing if they were at home? Now, it's not ruling out that if you're in the likes of trades that there's nothing that somebody can't do from home, because that could be an ideal opportunity to catch up on any training, apprentices to be catching up on book work, time to be stock taking vans, cleaning work vehicles. So thinking outside the box, how can you keep people with you and keep them doing work away from the workplace if that's what's required. Considering what can be done to eliminate and minimise risks. So this is all about your risk assessments. So looking at your workplace and how can you minimise exposure and transmission of COVID-19 in your workplace. Your people are a big part of that, and they will have really good ideas as well about what you can be doing. And that could be extra sanitation, it could be talking to other tenants about how you're going to manage bathrooms and kitchen facilities and the likes. So keep talking to your people about what you're identifying as risks and also what they're identifying as risks. Many heads are greater than one. And the last one here is about ensuring staff know what wellbeing support is available to them. There is a wealth of support available. Mental Health Foundation have got a number of resources on their website. For Xero subscribers, Xero is still offering XAP, which is a type of EAP service, and it's via Benny Star, but it's fully paid for at the moment by Xero. And so if you're a Xero subscriber, that is available to you, your people, and their families. So it's quite broad in terms of who can have that. There is also the 1737 24-hour, 7-day-a-week helpline that people can phone. So if you don't have your own EAP or staff support schemes, there is some support out there available. So the next bit, you've got to engage and communicate with people, but there are some aspects that you may need to consult with your people about as well. So absolutely, if you're looking at any changes that could change terms and conditions of employment, so this might be about looking at how people are working, what days they're working, span of hours and the likes. Anything that could change their terms and conditions of employment should be consulted on, and it should be subject to a variation. So if you're putting alternate arrangements in place, make sure that you're following those consultation rules. If you're looking to access the government financial support for people that are having to isolate, awaiting test results, or because they're being required to self-isolate, if you're looking to do that, then you must make sure that you've got their permission to share their personal information with MSD. So that's something that you'll also need to consult about. And I've talked a little bit already about control measures for minimising and eliminating risks. So again, keep talking to your people around what does that look like. If you've got some risks identified, what are the things that you can put in place to try and minimise those risks. So consultation is really important. From a risk assessment perspective, it's certainly WorkSafe's expectation that you're doing that. Preparation for the coming weeks. So this is what you can be doing yourselves. The first one is checking your employment terms for your people. So understanding what their entitlements are, and I've got there knowing what the entitlements are, but also what the terms are as to what you would need to negotiate on. So if you've got somebody that you're saying you're an office worker, 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, and you're going to go to split working, then that's something that you'd need to consult about. So start with the beginnings. Also check your leave clauses. Check things like sick leave in terms of, is there a cap on how much sick leave people have got? I've certainly seen some agreements of late where it just says you get 5 days sick leave a year. Well, that would override the basics of the employment law with a cap of 20 days because it's offering something better than what the law is. And knowing what you'd need to consult on. So once you've looked at employment terms, contractor terms, knowing those points where you might have some differences and you do need to consult with people is really important. So getting ahead of the game in that respect is really helpful. Now, I touched on before accessing financial support from the government. So there's 3 main schemes, and I've got 2 here listed. The short-term absence payment. This is a one-off payment for when people are having to isolate awaiting test results. And so that one's got less obligations, but it is to help you pay the wages of that person while they're having to self-isolate. Now, something we learnt last week is that people can access their test results much quicker by logging into their MyCovid account rather than awaiting the answer from Public Health. So generally we're seeing results coming back in a couple of days at the moment. But that is a payment there to be applied for via MSD. Just make sure you've got permission to share that person's details with MSD. The leave support payment, this one's a little bit trickier. This is a weekly payment for people who are actually being required to self-isolate, and that is because they are COVID positive, they're a close contact of somebody who is, or they're caring for a dependent who falls into one of those categories. Now that weekly payment needs to be applied for obviously on a weekly basis, but it does have a number of obligations with it. And the big ones to know about is that you are signing to say that you will make your very best efforts to pay the person their ordinary pay. And if you can't do that, then at least 80% of their ordinary pay. and that you will not compel the person to use their leave entitlements. So that's not to say that you can't agree for somebody to top up with their leave entitlements, or if you're telling the story to say you simply can't top up wages, or you can't top up either to the 80% or ordinary wages. You're consulting with that about that. And again, your terms of your employment agreement is what's going to be really important here. So they're both great schemes and they're unavailable, but be factoring in that that is a payment to help you pay wages. You will still need to be budgeting on top of that for annual holidays, KiwiSaver and ACC payments. So that's not a part of the payment you're receiving from government. There is the expectation too that you are passing that payment on to the person unless their earnings are less than the payment received. And there's some rules around what to do if the payment is more than what you need to pay to the person. In some cases you may need to pay the balance back to government. So great scheme there. And this is the last slide that I was going to talk through for today, and that's about what you can be talking to others about. So obviously come and talk to Grow HR around your people aspects and what you should be consulting, engaging with, or could be consulting and engaging about and preparing for. But there's lots of other activities for your business as well to be thinking about, that some of it dovetails in with your people piece. So cash flow, that's talking with your bank and accountant to make sure that you're going to be able to meet wages and meet your debt commitments. So if you had to close your business for a couple of weeks with all staff having to self-isolate, have you got enough cash flow there to manage through that period? And if not, what can you get going with now? So really hard to ring the banks last minute on that one. Supply chain, same thing. If you use one core supplier and you're on fairly regular supplies, what happens if they get COVID in their workforce and they've got lots of people knocked out? So have you got enough supplies there for you? Transport, again, the issue with couriers. So they're talking about critical workers being able to rat test to get back to work quicker. But what are your arrangements? How do you do things? I've heard a couple of stories of businesses who have gone to reduced days of doing their dispatch out, and that's working for them to try and manage that courier access. Comms and PR. So do you work with somebody around your communications? What do you need to prepare for in terms of how you might communicate? So if you had a reputation as being a spreader for COVID-19, you couldn't operate, or anything that requires you to communicate either with your customers, or if you've got press coming in to ask questions, what do you need to think about in that respect? Again, link in with your health and safety people around safety assessments. So that whole risk assessment space and what you can do to minimise risk is really important. And the last one there I've got is technology, and that's especially important if your people can work remotely. So have a look at who your technology suppliers are. Have you got enough technology? Are you still well set up that if everyone had to be home from tomorrow, that you could transition really easily with that? So that's the end of what I was going to talk about today. It is a bit of a fly-by-nighting, as it seems to be when I do these vlogs. But look, the team is here, we're fully working, we are in bubbles so that we can try and keep our service going as well. So if you want to know a little bit about how that's working for us and the good and bad of what we're learning from that, then feel free to have a chat about that. Otherwise, get in touch with the team via our email there, or our phone number 878 5454. So I hope that's been of use to you. Thank you.